Sylvester Stallone scrolls through his phone late at night when something unusual catches his eye. A blurry TikTok video of an elderly woman claiming she was a background extra in the original Rocky. At first, he thinks it's just another viral hoax, until he sees her face. He freezes, that smile. He remembers it. The next morning, without telling anyone, he boards a flight to Philadelphia. Hours later, he's standing at the door of a small row house, holding a printout of that frame. When the woman opens the door, she gasps, and what happens next doesn't just leave her speechless, it changes everything. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you love stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe. Because tomorrow at 6 p.m., we've got another one you won't believe. She was just a blur in the background, not a name in the credits, not a speaking role, just a passing smile on a cold Philadelphia sidewalk. But sometimes, that's all it takes to change the course of a legend. Dolores Mancini, D to the few who still remembered her name, sat in the same creaky armchair she had for the last 37 years. The cushion was worn thin, the armrest stained with time, and the doily on the headrest slightly crooked from where her head leaned night after night. Outside, the wind howled like it remembered her better days. She stirred her coffee slowly, methodically, as if time moved only at the pace of her spoon. Her knees ached from the cold. Her left hip, metal since 2009, clicked softly every time she shifted in her seat. On the tiny television in front of her, the original Rocky played once again, third time this week. Some channel called it a legacy marathon. To her, it was just noise, until the camera panned to that familiar street. And there she was. Not for long, maybe 2 seconds tops. But she saw it. More than that, she remembered it. She had walked past Rocky Balboa, Sylvester Stallone himself, during a single tracking shot on a bitter January morning in 1975. And when she smiled, it wasn't planned. It wasn't even supposed to happen, but it stayed in the film. And every year since, she watched it like a sacred ritual. Her quiet moment, her tiny imprint on something much bigger. She never told anyone, not really, not in a way that mattered. Until her granddaughter, Sophia, posted a video online. Sophia was 22, brilliant, and in love with forgotten stories. She studied film at Temple and lived off ramen, caffeine, and the occasional inspiration spiral. She had a TikTok account, mostly filled with clips of old diners, broken neon signs, and interviews with aging locals who still remembered when the Eagles couldn't win a game. One afternoon, she had asked her Nonna to talk about Philly in the 70s. What she got was a 2-minute recording of Dolores saying, almost in passing, "Oh, I was in Rocky once, for a second." That was all Sophia needed. She clipped the video, added the iconic music, paused it at the exact frame, zoomed in. The caption read, "My grandma was a background extra in the original Rocky, 1976. He smiled at her. She never forgot. She posted it, then forgot about it. Until the world didn't. The video went viral, hundreds of thousands of views in less than 12 hours. Comments pouring in, "Is that really her? She's the woman in the coat. Someone tell Stallone." And then, one comment stood out. Verified. Simple, devastating. The real Sly, Stallone. That smile changed everything. DM me. Sophia screamed so loud she startled the neighbors. Meanwhile, Dolores had no idea, no phone in hand, no social media, no reason to believe the past had any reason to return, until the knock. It came soft, polite, like whoever was behind it wasn't sure they belonged. She opened the door slowly. There he was. Older, weathered, but unmistakably him, Sylvester Stallone. And in his hand, folded in half like it had been opened and closed 100 times, was a printed screenshot from the viral video. Face, smiling, frozen in time. He didn't speak right away, neither did she. Then finally, he said, almost whispering, "I've been looking for you since." Then her knees gave out. He caught her gently, just like in the movies. But this wasn't a movie. This was real. And what neither of them knew, what no one watching that video could ever guess, was that her smile didn't just brighten a scene, it saved a life. 47 years earlier, he was on the verge of quitting. It was the third day of filming. The studio wanted him replaced. The crew didn't believe in the script. He hadn't eaten properly in days. His hands were cold, his eyes bloodshot, and every voice in his head told him, "You're not an actor. You're a fraud." They needed one clean tracking shot on the one uninterrupted walk through the heart of Philadelphia. The first 2 takes were ruined. A car horn, a kid shouting. They had 1 shot left before losing the light. He walked the path again, head down, step slow. Then, there she was, a woman he'd never seen before, wrapped in a scarf, holding a small grocery bag. She smiled. It wasn't big, it wasn't flashy, but it was kind, like someone saying, "I see you. I believe in you. Keep going." And in that second, something shifted. The take was perfect. They kept it in the film, and he never forgot the woman with the quiet smile. Now, nearly 5 decades later, he was standing in front of her again, and all Dolores could say was, "You remember?" He nodded, then took her hand and said, "I never forgot." She cried. He did too. Sophia, watching from the stairs, filmed none of it. Some moments aren't meant to be captured, some are meant to be felt. That night they sat in her living room, the TV off, the lights dim. She told him about her late husband, about working at the bakery, about watching Rocky every year like a private tradition. And he told her something he had never told the press, that the day they filmed that scene, he had been ready to walk away, that her smile had grounded him, that when everything felt fake, she reminded him that something was real, and it made him stay. "Why didn't you ever try to find me?" she asked softly. "I didn't know how," he said. "I only had the memory." They sat in silence. Then he added, "But when I saw that video, I knew instantly it was you." Outside, the wind began to die down. The sky turned a deep navy blue. And somewhere on a streaming channel neither of them subscribed to, Rocky played once again. At the 43-minute mark, a young man walked past a stranger on a sidewalk. She smiled. He smiled back. History happened. And finally, it came full circle. The thing about memories, they don't fade. They just wait. Sometimes for a trigger, sometimes for a voice, and sometimes for a knock at the door. Dolores had always been good at pretending she was fine, even after the bakery closed, even after her husband Sal passed in his sleep in '98, even after her knees stopped bending the way they used to. She had learned to smile through the lonely, to sip coffee like it was to sit in silence like it was. But now, with Sylvester Stallone sitting across from her at her chipped kitchen table, the silence felt different. It wasn't empty, it was shared. That scared her. Sophia stood in the hallway watching the two of them. She had her phone in her hand, but she didn't press record. Not now. Too personal. She had never seen her grandmother this alive. "So," Dee said finally, breaking the quiet, "why now?" Stallone leaned back in the wooden chair. It creaked under his weight. "I saw the video. I remembered the moment. But it wasn't just that. I needed to see you, because I never got to say thank you. For a smile?" He wasn't joking. His voice cracked slightly. And suddenly, Dolores saw him, not as a movie star, not as Rocky Balboa, but as a man who had carried more than anyone knew. He told her everything, how the producers had laughed at his script, how he had sold his dog to buy food, how he wrote Rocky in 3 days while living in a crumbling apartment with a mattress on the floor, and how, on the day they filmed that scene, he had nearly walked away from it all. "You were there," he said, "like a sign, like someone upstairs put you in that spot just for me." She didn't know what to say. So she did what she always did when words failed. She reached across the table and touched his hand. It trembled slightly. So did hers. That night, he stayed late. They watched old home videos on a dusty VHS player. Sal grilling in the backyard. Sophia as a toddler in a Halloween costume. Dolores laughing like someone who hadn't yet learned to hide it. "I never had this," Stallone said quietly. "What?" "Family, normalcy, quiet." "You had the world," she replied. "Maybe, but not this." She looked at him then, not like a fan, not like a woman who'd watched his movies 50 times, but like someone who saw the cracks in the marble and loved them. The days that followed moved in slow, surreal rhythms. Stallone came back the next morning, then again the day after that. Flowers, bagels, stories. Sometimes Sophia joined them. Sometimes it was just the two of them. He helped her fix the broken step on her porch. She gave him her late husband's old Eagles jacket. They watched Rocky the Screw together, him cringing at the fight scenes, her narrating every line before he said it. But with each passing day, the air shifted, because behind the joy, behind the rediscovered warmth, something heavier lingered. Dolores had a secret, one she had never told Sophia, one that now grew louder every time Stallone smiled at her like she mattered. She was sick, and she didn't have much time. It started 6 months ago. A sharp pain in her lower back, dizziness, then the scan. Then the doctor's words, gentle but unshakable. Stage 4. It spread. She had declined treatment, too old, too tired. No point dragging it out. But now, with him here, with this strange, beautiful second chance, she wondered if maybe she had been wrong. Sophia noticed the change first. Her grandmother walked slower, winced when she sat, excused herself to the bathroom more often than usual. But when she asked, Dee brushed it off. "Just old bones, honey." Still, one night, Sophia checked the cabinet. Pills, hidden CT scan results, a hospice brochure. She froze, then The next morning, Sophia waited until Stallone had left. She sat across from Dee, her face pale. "Nona," she said softly, "you have to tell him." Dee shook her head. "No, he just found me. I won't have him lose me too. But he deserves to know." "No," she said again. This is my gift to him, not my goodbye." Later that day, Stallone returned. They sat on the back porch, watching the autumn leaves fall like golden memories. "I used to think I'd be forgotten," Dee said. He looked at her, startled. "Are you kidding? I was just a blur in the background, remember?" "No," firmly. "You were the moment." That night, Dolores didn't sleep. She stood at the mirror, brushing her hair slowly, each strand thinner than the last, her eyes sunken, her skin pale. She stared at her reflection, then whispered to it, "Do it." But she couldn't, not yet. Sophia had been uploading small clips of Dolores and Stallone's visits. Nothing too invasive. Just snippets, him fixing the porch, her making coffee, both of them laughing at some inside joke. And then one video, just 6 seconds long, went nuclear. Dolores sitting in the armchair, Stallone kneeling beside her. She says offhandedly, "You know, I used to think I was invisible." He replies, "Then let me be the one who sees you now." The video hit 3.2 million views in 24 hours. The world fell in love with her. Again, messages flooded in, news stations called, talk shows begged for appearances. A producer even offered to turn her story into a documentary. But Dolores said no. "This story isn't for them," she told Sophia. "It's for him." And yet, the clock was ticking. Her body reminded her every morning, every night. She had days, weeks, if she was lucky. And the closer she grew to Stallone, the harder it became to hide it. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the city in hues of fire and forgiveness, Stallone turned to her and asked, "Is there something you're not telling me?" She froze. Her breath caught, the wind stilled, and just as she opened her mouth to speak, the screen went black. Some truths don't come in whispers, they arrive like thunder. After a long, aching silence, she hadn't meant to lie, not really. She told herself she was protecting him, giving him peace, not pain, letting him remember her as the spark that lit the fire, not the flame that was dying out. But secrets don't sit still forever, especially not the ones that tick. When he asked if she was hiding something, Dolores couldn't meet his eyes. There was a pause, 3 heartbeats long. Then she forced a smile. I just didn't expect to matter again. That he wanted to press? Something in her voice didn't ring true, but he didn't. Because sometimes when you're afraid of what you'll hear, silence feels safer than truth. That night, he lay awake in the hotel room they had booked for him just a few blocks away from Dee's home. The fan whirred above him, useless against the questions turning over in his head. He had lived through boxing rings, red carpets, marriages, betrayals. He had written heroes from scratch, invented legends with nothing but ink and pain. But now, he couldn't write his way out of this feeling. The sense that something was slipping through his fingers. Sophia knew, and it was eating her alive. She had honored her grandmother's wishes so far, but now, seeing Stallone investing more of himself each day, she felt like an accomplice to something cruel. On the 4th morning, while Dee was still sleeping, Sophia waited for Stallone on the porch. He showed up with fresh bagels and a smile. That smile vanished when he saw her face. "Sophia?" he asked. "We need to talk." They sat on the edge of the stoop, morning sun washing the street in pale gold, and she told him everything. For a long time, he said nothing, just stared at the sidewalk like it might give him an answer. Then finally, he whispered, "How long?" She doesn't know for sure, but not long. He nodded slowly, absorbing it, like a punch to the gut. One he'd been bracing for, and still wasn't ready to take. "Does she know you're telling me this?" Sophia shook her head. "I couldn't keep it from you anymore. You deserve to know. Before..." He didn't ask before what. He knew. That afternoon, Dolores noticed the shift. He was still kind, still warm, but quieter, like someone walking through a dream, careful not to wake it. She watched him from across the table, her heart twisting. He knows. She could see it in his eyes. And suddenly the walls she'd built, the ones made of good intentions and silent denial, they went for a walk later that day. Slow. Measured. The autumn air was crisp, the sky a soft overcast gray. They walked past the old bakery. It was a laundromat now. They passed the park where she used to feed the pigeons, the church where she was married, the steps of the museum. She looked at him then and said, "You ever get tired of those steps?" He smiled faintly. "Sometimes. But they're part of me now." She nodded. "I think that's how I feel about being forgotten. It used to hurt. Now it's just part of me." He stopped walking. Turned to her. "You're not forgotten, Dee." She met his gaze. No more pretending. "Not by you, but you're not everyone." He stepped closer. "No, I'm not. But sometimes it only takes one person." Then he took her hand, and for a moment she felt like the lead in her own story. Sophia, everything. The fear and the truth she hadn't dared speak out loud. "I don't want him to watch me fade." Sophia held her as she then whispered, "But maybe he came back so you wouldn't have to fade alone." 3 days later, the documentary offer came again, this time with a twist. A major streaming platform, full creative control. They wanted to tell her story, their story. Before, it was... Until Stallone called her bluff. "If it were anyone else," he said, "you'd say yes. So why not for you?" "I'm not a story." "No," he said. "You're the reason mine exists." She agreed. On one condition, no scripts, no lights, just the truth. The documentary was filmed in her living room, a single camera, raw. They asked her to talk about that day in 1975, and she did. With clarity, with humor, with tears. "I didn't think I mattered," she said on camera. "I was just trying to get home before my milk spoiled. But I saw him, and something told me, smile. So I did." Then she looked off screen and added, "And he smiled back. That was the whole thing, but maybe that was everything." The clip of that moment went viral again, faster, louder. This time, it wasn't just nostalgia, it was reverence. Dee Mancini, the woman in the background, had become a symbol of kindness, of timing, of the idea that sometimes the smallest gestures shape the biggest stories. But just as her world expanded, offers, interviews, tributes, her body betrayed her faster. The decline was sudden. Breathing became harder, movement slower. The day before Thanksgiving, she didn't wake until noon. Sophia panicked. Stallone came immediately. She smiled when she saw them. Still here, but they could see the end approaching. That night, as a storm rolled in over Philly, Stallone stayed by her side. The house was quiet. Only the soft beep of medical monitors and the wind tapping the windows. He held her hand. "I don't want you to go. You already said goodbye once." He shook his head. "No, I didn't." She turned to him, eyes glassy but clear. "Then say it now." He leaned in, took her hand in both of his and said, "You changed my life, Dee. When I had nothing, you gave me a moment of humanity. You reminded me why I mattered, so if you go now, just know you were never a background extra. You were the start of everything." She closed her eyes, breathed out, and whispered. The next morning, something unexpected happened. Sophia came rushing into the room holding her phone. "Nona, look!" A clip from the documentary had made it into a national awards shortlist. But more than that, the Academy wanted to recognize her, a lifetime honor for impact on American cinema. Dolores blinked, then laughed. It was the last time she would. That evening, while the city slept under blankets of rain, Stallone sat with her one final time. He told her about his latest script, about a character who loses everything, then finds it again in the last place he expects. She smiled. "You should call her Dee," he nodded. "I already did." Outside, the rain stopped, the wind died, and somewhere on a screen in a living room far away, Rocky played again. At the 43-minute mark, a woman smiled, a man smiled back. And nothing was ever the same. It wasn't the smile, not really. It was what it meant, that someone saw him when he didn't even see himself. 1 week after Dolores passed, the city of Philadelphia did something it had never done before. They added a name. At the base of the Rocky Steps, carved into a bronze plaque beneath the statue of Sylvester Stallone in character, was a new inscription. "To the woman who reminded us all that a moment of kindness can change a life. Dolores Dee Mancini. You were never just in the..." People stopped to read it. Some cried. Others Googled her. A few remembered the smile from the movie and finally understood, but none of them knew the full story. Only he did. The Academy wanted to present the honorary recognition at the Oscars. Sophia stood on stage in her grandmother's place, wearing her Nona's favorite necklace and holding the envelope with trembling hands. "I'd like to thank everyone for honoring my grandmother," she began, voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. She didn't change the world. She changed one man's world. And sometimes that's enough. The audience rose to their feet, a standing ovation, not for a star, but for a woman who smiled once and meant it. Back in Philly, Stallone visited her grave. No cameras, no entourage, just him, and a folded photograph in his jacket. The same one he'd carried when he first knocked on her door, the paused frame from Rocky, her smile. He sat beside the grave for a long time. Then he lit a small cigar, against the cemetery rules, but he figured she'd let it slide and looked out at the skyline. "Guess we both made it." A few months later, the documentary was released. The Woman Who Smiled. A simple title, but powerful. It opened to record numbers. Critics called it a love letter to the unseen, a masterclass in emotional storytelling, and proof that kindness leaves a legacy. Audiences flooded social media with stories of their own D moments. Times they had smiled at strangers. Times someone had smiled at them and changed everything. It started something, a movement. Background but not forgotten people posted photos of overlooked heroes, teachers, nurses, janitors, grandparents, with captions like, "They were in the background, but not to me." It caught fire. The world needed it. Sophia started a foundation in Dee's name. Small grants for elderly storytellers, workshops in memory preservation, and a scholarship for film students who wanted to tell real stories, quiet ones, honest ones. The first recipient was a young woman from West Philly. In her application, she wrote, "I want to find the people no one notices, because maybe they're the ones who matter most." Sophia knew her Nona would have loved that. As for Stallone, he finished the script, the one he had whispered to Dee in those final days. It wasn't about boxing, or revenge, or fame. It was about a man who loses faith in himself until a stranger reminds him, without words, that he still matters. He titled it 43 Minutes In. It premiered a year later. There wasn't a dry eye in the theater. At the final scene, the main character walks down a gray city street, burdened, broken. A woman passes. She smiles. He looks up, pauses, smiles back. Fade to black. On the screen, white letters appear, inspired by a true moment. Then, one more line, to Dee. Sophia watched the film from the back row. When the credits rolled, she stayed in her seat, wiping tears, holding her grandmother's necklace tight in her palm. She didn't feel alone, not anymore. She felt seen. Years passed. Stallone aged. The world moved on. But one thing remained. Every November, he returned to the same porch, sometimes with flowers, sometimes with silence, always with memory. He would sit for a while, then, before leaving, he'd touch the door gently and whisper the words that had become, "Thank you for smiling." She was just a blur in the background, but she wasn't forgotten. She was the spark, the smile, the scene. The proof that even the smallest moment, if true, can echo forever. Because sometimes the background is where the most important stories begin. Hey, thanks for watching. You didn't have to, you know, but you did. And maybe that means you believe in the quiet ones too, the ones in the background, the ones we forget, but shouldn't. So wherever you are, thanks for seeing her. Thanks for seeing the story. I'll never forget it. And I hope you don't either. Take care of yourself and keep smiling. Just in case someone out there needs it,